Shall I start? So, good evening, everyone. I hope everyone is doing well. I am Himani Kharai. I'm your host for the session. And today we have a very distinguished guest with us. He's the president of the Criminologists Society of Jammu and Kashmir, author to more than 100 articles and various books, a former senior panel counsel of Government of India, and former deputy advocate general of the state of Jammu and Kashmir. If I suffice, I think I can go on with the achievements he has. I very warmly welcome Mr. Rameshwar Singh Jamwal.
Thank you.
It is an absolute honor, immense pleasure, and a privilege to have you with us today, sir. Thank you for being here. If I could not stop myself, sir, while I was researching about you, I found out that your book, Controlling the Mind of the Criminal, the Yogic Way, is listed in the US Department of Justice Programs.
Yeah.
For those who don't know about the Justice Programs, the US website, the Office of Justice Programs is a federal agency that provides federal leadership grants, training, and other resources to improve the nation's capacity to prevent and reduce crime, assist victims, and enhance the rule by strengthening the criminal and juvenile system. So it's a great privilege to have you here, sir, and I feel really proud you're sitting here with you today. Shall we start with the questions?
Yeah, please.
Okay. So, sir, the first question goes like, as your field of interest has been criminology, could you please shed some light on the importance of criminology and how studies in the field of criminology helps the society?
Well, my interest in criminology started way back in 1990s. I started looking for the reasons as to why people commit crimes. What are those compelling reasons? Are these biological reasons? Are these physiological reasons? Are these psychological reasons, social reasons, economic reasons? And as I tried to dive deep and deep into this, I found out that despite so much of research and so much of work for the last about 300 or 400 years, criminologists or penologists, they have not been able to find out exactly as to what are the reasons why people commit crime. So I tried to look into all those Western theories. And when I did not find much in that, it's not that they have not done work or their theories are inadequate. They explain a lot, but still there are some gap areas which needed to be addressed. Otherwise, if they had found out the reasons of criminality, perhaps the jails and prisons all across the globe would not have been overflowing with convicts and under trials. Right. So once I tried to look into the Indian philosophy into this thing, I found out that there was a lot of literature which explained as to why people commit wrong acts or unjustifiable acts or criminal acts, and how those acts and those behaviors can be modified. So on the basis of those almost 32 years of work, I have come to a conclusion that there are certain reasons which reasons I have tried to explain in my book, and that Controlling the Mind of Criminal, the Yogic Way, in which I have propounded a theory. It's called Yogic Crime Theory.
Right.
And perhaps I'm the only Indian who has propounded a theory on crime.
Right.
And that explains as to why people commit crime and how that criminal behavior can be modified.
That was very insightful, sir. Let's go on to another question. Being a criminology enthusiast, while you were conducting various researches and studies, what did you understand is the contribution and participation of India in the field of criminology?
Well, I did not find much Indian contribution in this field. For the last about 300-400 years, people have been trying, mostly from the Western world, they have been trying to find out as to what are the reasons why people commit crime. And on the basis of their research studies, they try to look into all these aspects from biological or psychological angles. But biology itself does not explain everything. For example, human behavior emanates from human brain. You can cut open the brain, you can find out the various parts of the brain. But so far as mind is concerned, Nobody knows as to what is mind, where it is situated, how it functions, what are its different components, uh, how it can be modified. And unless and until you go into all these things, you cannot find out the reasons of criminality. So I was trying to ascertain all these things. Then I tried to find out the Indian literature about this thing, and found out that maybe because of certain reasons the government did not support all these endeavors, or maybe that people did not take this fields that much seriously, which it should have been taken. But anyway, I tried to find out, and then came to a conclusion that Indian philosophy explains it all. There are certain reasons why people become criminals. People must have heard about three terms called Sattvic, Rajasic, and Tamasic.
Right.
Now, what are these terms? How Sattvic behavior is acquired? How Rajasic behavior is acquired? Why Tamasic people commit crimes? And how Tamasic vritti or behavior can be modified, can be taken to the Rajasic or Sattvic type. So all these things I try to explain and try to find out, and that is the reason this book has been written.
Yes, sir. While I was going through the book, I realized that you have tried to go to the grassroots of the issue, and it was very intriguing to read the book because it's a very different perspective into the criminal nature of a person.
Right.
Thank you very much, sir. Another question for you is, could you please enlighten us about the researches going on in the field of criminology in India and over the globe?
Well, at the global level, people are now trying to understand it from a different perspective. Initially, that Cesar Lombroso's theory that there are certain biological factors or maybe biological explanations for crime, but of late it was discarded. But now the research is again going back to all these reasons. People are trying to understand as to whether genes and cells are responsible for our behavior, that fetal programming, the environment which a child gets in the mother's womb, or maybe in the environment when he grows up, whether these are responsible for some of the reasons. And I found that yes, these are certainly issues which need to be looked into seriously in India, especially because in India there is not that much of work going on in this particular field. For example, when I try to understand the reasons of terrorism and nexus violence in some of the regions, for example, in Kashmir or in Central India or East India, I found out that this terrorist behavior is a learned behavior. Maybe there are certain reasons. For example, if a would-be mother is not taking certain minerals or certain amounts of zinc or phosphate or cadmium or maybe iron, that if that is coming in deficient quantity, then there are certain regions of the brain which are responsible for controlling our violent behavior. Maybe that those regions of the brain do not develop that much properly in the child in the womb, and because of that reason, perhaps he's not able to control his anger, maybe certain other factors also. But these are the factors which needed to be studied, but nobody has given any attention to it in India. So my request to the policymakers, to the policy framers is that they should look into all these things and try to find out as to whether these reasons are really responsible for some of our crimes. Then there are psychological reasons as well. I say that the thoughts, the ideas, the passions, the lust, the greed, these are the things which biology does not explain as to from where our thoughts come. And if we can go to that particular point from where our thoughts, our ideas emerge, perhaps we can manipulate that part of the brain or that part of the mind. And by manipulating that, by taking it towards positivity, we can certainly change the human behavior. And that is the area which needed to be addressed.
That's very true, very apt, whatever you said. So let's move on to another question. What is the, according to you, what is the persisting scope of criminology in the contemporary world as we see today?
Well, at the international level, there is a lot of scope.
Yeah.
Prisons are employing criminologists, and the justice delivery system, all the organizations involved in the justice delivery system, for example, the police, the judicial services, they are employing. But so far as India is concerned, nobody has given a thought to this thing, whether we can make use of the criminology field for enhancing the quality of life in India or not. So, for example, in the latest UN conference, I presented a paper as to how criminal behavior is affecting the women issues, the crimes against women. So NIPSID, ICDS, and so many other organizations which are involved in uh, uh, women issues, they can take help of the criminologists. And the prison authorities, they must take benefit of and they must make use of the criminology field. But unfortunately, this field has not been fully exploited or to fully made use of. And that is the reason that our country has suffered much on account of this factor. And this issue needs to be addressed.
That is very well said, sir. As my question is not part of the questionnaire we have prepared, I just had, like, while you were speaking, I just realized that how much do you think forensic psychology is connected to criminology? I mean, how much it helps in the process of criminology?
Yeah, so far as the technology part is concerned, it certainly helps in solving the crime problems. For example, in apprehending the criminals, on in profiling the criminal profile, in and addressing to some extent the crimes which have been committed. But so far as the reasons of crime are concerned, technology may not help it. For that matter, you will have to go to the other factors, as I said, that Indian philosophy explains it in a thorough way. For that matter, technology may not be of help, but Indian philosophy will certainly help in this.
That's very correct, sir. Moving on to another question. Can you please elaborate the losses caused by different types of crimes to the society and also the criminal himself?
Yeah, you see that in Western world, they have tried to explain and find out not only the reasons but the effects of crime as well. For example, in the US, they have tried to find out, and they found out that around 300 to 600 billion US dollars are lost because of white collar criminality and blue collar criminality only.
Right.
Then a lot of corporate houses, they are losing much because of the criminal factors. Nations all across the globe lose about 5 to 10% of their GDP because of crime. In India, or maybe certain other countries which are affected by terrorism as well, for example, in Syria, in Afghanistan, and maybe to some extent in India as well, it can be 10 to 20% of the GDP as well. And considering the size of Indian GDP, it's around 300 $3 trillion US dollars. You can imagine as to how much loss is being caused because of the crime factor. And unless and until we try to take some proactive steps by virtue of which we can reduce this factor, even if we succeeded by reducing, say, 1% or 2%, that will save thousands of crores. So that factor, apart from the damage which it causes to the society, for example, somebody is killed in terrorist affected area, or maybe because of some murder take place, some rapes take place, or some other forms of crime, all sorts of even the cyber crimes nowadays. You take the environmental crime. Each and every person on this globe is suffering because of the environmental crime. But unfortunately, the governments have not taken this thing that much seriously. And if we address all these issues, I'm sure that the lot of the people and and the and the future of the coming generation, that would be saved.
That's absolutely right. Sir, like throughout the process, we only focus on what losses are caused to the society, what losses the society go through due to the crimes that are committed. So nobody looks from the perspective of the criminal. what the criminal goes through, what he suffers later on, what his life comprises of after he has committed a crime, and then he goes on with the process later. Can you please elaborate on that? And
You see that apart from the criminal, there are 4 or 5 persons in his family who also suffer because of his criminal activity.
absolutely,
Once the person goes into jail, the entire family life that comes to a standstill. There's nobody in the family to earn, nobody in the family to feed them. So 4 or 5 family members of the criminal. Then the person who has been affected because of the crime, victim of the crime, his family is also suffering.
absolutely.
So society is suffering, nation is suffering, and each and every person on this globe is suffering. There are around 11 million people in jails all across the globe at this point of time. When I wrote that first volume of that book, at that point of time, there were 9.5 million people in jails. In another 4 or 5 years, that figure has risen to 11 million. So you can imagine. And it's not that only those persons who are in the jail, only they are affected. The persons who have come out of the jail, their life is totally hell. They cannot adjust themselves in the society. Nobody believes them. Nobody has any faith in them. Nobody is ready to give any job to them. And then his entire business or his job has come to a standstill. So these are the factors which have to be addressed too. And because of all these factors, there is a lot of pressure on the government system. How to rehabilitate them, how to make them fit in the society. These are the big jobs, but unfortunately, our justice delivery system does not take care of all these things. We think that once the person goes in the jail or maybe he comes out, thereafter our job is over. Our job is not over that. It rather starts there. So we have to take into consideration all these factors.
That is very enlightening from the perspective of the criminal as well. Thank you very much. Let's move on to another question, sir. Can the criminal behavior be changed, and by what modes, and how to start, how to and where to start from?
Yeah, you see that there are certain factors, as I said, that genes are also responsible for human behavior. Certain behaviors which we inherit from our parents. It's not that that much of behavior cannot be modified. There are mid-course corrections as well. But for that matter, a lot of steps are required to be taken into. Then there are certain behaviors which are acquired during the upbringing, during his school days, his college days, his societal days, where he learns a lot. And behaviorism says, science of behaviorism says that whatever can be learned can be unlearned as well. So if a particular negative behavior or criminal behavior has been acquired during upbringing or maybe during the later stages of the life, that can be modified. The second is the epigenetic factors. They can also be modified. For that matter, the yoga and Sankhya philosophies, they are quite helpful in changing the criminal behavior. And then you said that from where we have to start. You see that at the government level or at the society level, or maybe at the corporate level, we have to start right at the beginning of a student life. From the primary level to the university level, we have to take care of all these things. Educational institutions must introduce these concepts, must introduce the programs and the syllabus in the educational institutions, by virtue of which these programs can be implemented and the behavior of the students can be modified. Once the person goes into a serious offending stage, then the judicial system comes in. Judicial system, police apprehend the criminal, then the justice, then the courts punish him, and then the man goes to the prisons. But in the prisons, I have visited a number of prisons all across the country. I've seen that there are economic rehabilitation programs in our prison. But so far as the behavior changing concepts are concerned, that they are missing in our prison system. When I talk to them, I try to find out as to why they are not implementing. They said that we don't have the budgets for it. You see that the prisons, which are the ultimate forum where the prisoner is in contact with the government or with the system. Once he goes out, then he's out of the reach of the system. But once he is there in the system, you can take proactive steps. You can introduce yoga classes and Sankhya, behavior changing concepts in the prisons as well. But unfortunately, these things are missing in our system, and my whole effort has been to convince the governments and the lawmakers that kindly take proactive initiatives in introducing all these concepts and implementing these concepts in the prisons and in the schools and the colleges. And even the corporate sector must introduce all these programs in their workplaces, because the corporate sector is also losing much.
Right.
They're losing thousands and thousands of crores because of the crime sector, the blue collar criminality and the white collar criminality. And I'm trying to convince the corporate sector that if you take these steps, you can save a lot, maybe thousands of crores by implementing. And this concept is useful not only for the nations, but for the corporate sector, for the society, for the individuals. Each and every organ of the state must come into play in controlling crime and in checking the criminal.
Very well, sir. That's a very valuable insight into the criminal behavior and the modes that through which it can be changed and where to start from. Moving on, how the study of criminology does benefit the society and the legal system?
You see that criminology as a subject has not taken much roots in Indian educational system.
Right, right.
Very few universities have introduced the course of criminology in the post-graduation level or maybe at the diploma level. But the basics of criminology must be taught at the student level. We try to implement this program in various educational institutions in J&K. We try to tell the students that if they do a particular criminal act, for example, they violate any traffic law or some cyber law they violate, then the consequences can be very, very serious for them. And when the children came to know that for violating a cyber law, they can be convicted for 1 crore of this damages or maybe for 10 years of imprisonment, they were astonished because nobody knew about all these factors. And once the children come to know that these are the consequences of offending, then throughout their life they will carry this impression and they will try to follow the righteous path. So that is our endeavor, and that endeavor should be taken to the grassroots level at all levels, in all the schools, in all the states, in all union territories of India, and maybe abroad as well.
Absolutely, sir. It should start from the student level. I totally agree with you. Okay, so now, sir, I have another question for you, which is a little long. So please bear with me. So the question goes like, how much do you agree with the recurring idea that criminals have particular deformities such as thin neck, large chest, snub fingers or toes, or tattoos on the body, or they are physically different from law-abiding individuals, which is also explained under anthropological criminology?
Yeah. It was Cesar Lombroso who tried to explain this thing, that he studied lots of bodies of criminals and found out that there were certain deformities. And he tried to explain this thing that maybe in certain parts of their brain, they were still carrying those predatory nature of behavior, which our predecessors maybe millions of years ago had. But of late, this theory was discarded. Now, for the last couple of years, people are again trying to understand. And as I said, that in America, a lot of people are now trying to understand that because of the epigenetic factors, when we inherit our physical body from our parents, or maybe at the growing level when the child comes out of the womb of the mother and grows up in the society, there are certain factors which affect the brain development. And there are certain regions of the brain, amygdala and some other areas, which are responsible for controlling our violent behavior. And when those regions of the brain do not grow properly, then there can be certain types of violent criminals who commit all those violent acts only because of the deformities in their brain. But as I said that it's not that only by these violent crimes are the crimes which needed to be studied. There are hundreds of other crimes types which also needed to be addressed to. And then there are certain factors which I talked about earlier. For example, somebody commits a murder because of the greed factor. He wants to grab the property of somebody. Now, if you ask a biologist as to from where the greed is coming, he will not be able to understand or to explain that thing. In the same fashion, anger. Now, anger has been explained as certain secretions in the brain. Now, whether those secretions are responsible for the anger or they are the after effects of the anger, nobody has been able to explain that. And anger can come from all the 5 different sources. That punch kata which our philosophy explains, our skin, our eyes, our nose, our ears. You hear something bad about your family, you get angry. You see something bad, happening in front of you, you get angry. You taste something different which is not according to your taste, you get angry. So anger is coming from different sources. In the same fashion, passion, ego, these are the factors which needed to be studied. And these are the factors which have been explained adequately in our philosophy. So all these things, by combining the Western philosophies and Indian philosophies, we can elaborately explain all the human behavior, which I've tried to explain in that.
Very well said, sir. Very well. Because recently I was mentioning whatever you said at the moment. I was going through an interview of the convict of the Tandoor case. So while he was describing the behaviors of the inmates and everybody. So he was just quoting one example. Like he said that somebody came to him for counseling, and it was just 2 people. I guess their cars collided. So he did not even know why he hit him and killed him. Later on, he did not even realize that he has done such a big crime. And at that moment, he did not even realize that what he is doing.
Okay.
So when the crime is done, when he came to the prison, then he's like, I don't even recall why I committed the crime, why I hit him, and why he was dead. So mostly criminals are clueless.
So that anger factor is also there, but there are certain premeditated crimes. For example, you think that I have to punish somebody, I have to give punishment to somebody. I conceive an idea. Okay, after 6 months, I'm going to hurt that man. I'm going to kill him. For 6 months, you are taking that idea in your brain or your mind, and see where that idea is stored. Have you ever tried to understand this thing as to where our ideas are stored and how those ideas are extracted at the spur of a moment?
Yes, right.
So where those there are millions and millions of files which are lying in your brain, and how those files are extracted, and that point has been explained adequately, which our yoga philosophy says that there is a part called karmasya in our mind. That karmasya is just like a storehouse or your almirah, in which all those files are lying. And once you clear that store or your almirah, then there is a lot of scope for storing positive ideas. So that is the idea which I am trying to implement. And I'm saying that you can clear your minds and your brains by from those bad ideas, bad viruses, or bad things, and fill it up with the positive ideas and positive things. And that way you can change the personality of the person.
Absolutely, sir. Let's go on to the next question. So we are coming back to the human mind and brain part. So in your book, Controlling the Mind of a Criminal, the Yogic Way, you have exaggerated on the difference between human brain and human mind, which mostly comprises your talks. So please, can you elaborate?
You see that biologists can cut open the brain. They can see the different parts of the brain, frontal brain, the hindbrain, amygdala, and so many other parts of the brain. But so far as the mind factor is concerned, what is mind? Nobody knows about it. Right. Now, mind is something which cannot be cut open, which cannot be seen, but it is there. Right. It can assume any shape, howsoever big or small it may be. You can as big as mountain. You can become as small as a virus.
Right.
You have to just think about that. Then wherever you want to go, in the spur of a moment, you can reach there. You want to visit America, in the fraction of a second, you are in America. You want to visit the moon, you are there. You want to visit the end of this universe, in the fraction of a moment, you are there. Now, what is that which is taking you there? It is the human mind. And it is the human mind which has got the maximum speed in the world. People said that it is the light which moves at the fastest speed. But I say that it is the human mind which moves at the fastest speed. And it is the human mind which needs to be studied and which needs to not be modified as well. So for that matter, you will have to study a lot of Indian literature.
Absolutely. It's a very broad study as per the human brain and human mind. Thank you very much, sir. Let's go on to the next question. So what are your views on reformatory practices in jail, as you were talking about, like Vipassana meditation, counseling, and how actively these practices are performed in the jails?
Yes, in certain prisons they are doing this practice. They have introduced yoga and meditation and maybe Vipassana as well. But you see that most of the yogic practitioners who are teaching the prisoners, they are just focusing on three things: asana, pranayama, and some small step of meditation as well.
Right.
But yoga is a 8-step. It has got 8 limbs: yam, niyam, pranayam, pratyahar, dharana, dhyan, and samadhi.
Right.
Now, dharana and pratyahar, these are the step number 5 and 6. These are the 4 and 5. These are the two things which required attention, which has not been given to the yoga part. For example, dharana tells as to how you take your senses inwards, your outer senses. You have to take them inwards, and once you go inwards, then you can be in a position to control your senses. And our 5 sense organs, they are responsible for most of the crimes. So yogic practice which have been introduced in the prisons, they have not implemented this thing. Then yama and niyama are those universal truths or universal practices which needed to be implemented at the very first stage. Unless an until person is implementing yama and niyam, he cannot move forward. For example, if you do not step on the first step, how can you reach the 8th step?
Right.
So these are the things, and most of the yoga practitioners are those who are persons who are teaching yoga in the prisons. They don't know anything about criminology. They don't know anything about psychology. They don't know anything about behaviorism. They don't know anything about psychology. So I've tried to combine all these fields in one theory or one concept: yoga, Sankhya, then behaviorism, psychology, criminology, behaviorism, genetics, epigenetics, biology, and neurobiology. So all these things have been combined together in one concept, and that's why I have been able to explain this thing in a better way. And I think if this concept is implemented at the in the fullest form, then certainly the behaviors will change. Otherwise, it will just lead to the physical well-being of the prisoners, but nothing more.
Right. Right. Yeah, absolutely, sir. Because while I was going through the book, I went through the research outcome, which mentioned the same thing, that a few number of people who stopped performing yoga after a while, they went back to their usual routine as it was.
Continuity has to be there. Continuity has to be there, and it has to be a long-term plan.
Absolutely. Okay, sir. So let's go on to the next question. The question says, how can we dismantle the taboo associated with mental health in Indian society?
In India, mental health is generally taken as a taboo. People think that if somebody is pointing out that because of his certain issues in his mental makeup, maybe that he's being considered as a pagal or insane person, but it's not so. There are different stages of mental health. You can take steps at the very initial stage by virtue of which you can control all those factors which can lead to certain serious consequences. And if you do yoga, you do this meditation, certainly this will lead to a lot of improvement in the mental health scenario. And I have tried to find out as to what the WHO is saying about this thing. They are saying that more than 14% of Indian population, you can imagine if 140 billion people are there, more than 1 billion people are there in the Indian nation. How many people are affected because of this issue? And how many people are addressing this thing? It should not be taken as a taboo. And the people, once people uh, think that because of their behavior, certain issues are arising in the family. Maybe there are certain issues between the husband and the wife. Maybe there are certain between the father and the son, or maybe between the sister and the brother, or between the brothers. All these are the issues which are mental issues, which can be tackled in a better way. So these issues have to be taken seriously, and maybe certain other factors, also economic factors, and then a lot of career prospects, and so many other things are involved in this thing. So all these issues can be tackled in a better way. We take this thing that we can improve every moment, every second by using certain techniques and by using yoga and meditation practice.
Absolutely. Moving on to another question. How do you think technology can help in propagating mental well-being to the masses at large?
Well, and it's a good question. You see that for the last about 16 years, maybe 17 years, I'm trying to convince the governments that you should introduce all these programs in different sectors, but I failed to do that. Then ultimately, I had the copyright for this theory. Then I gave this theory to a firm called Singh International, which is now using technology to propagate this thing. They are using this thing to tell the governments, to tell the corporate sector, to tell the education sector, then the wealth forces, that by using this concept, they can make the lives of their employees, or maybe persons who are involved in this system, better. And technology can certainly disseminate the information quite fast, and this thing can be made use of in different corners of the world by using the technology and by using the Indian concept. And technology is a must for dissemination and for propagation of this idea and this concept.
Right. Okay. Moving on to another question. As you have taken some initiative for furthering the mental health, so can you please tell us something about it?
Yeah, as I tried to explain that for the last so many years, I have organized maybe dozens of seminars and conferences on this thing, in which lots of important people from all across the country came. Supreme Court judges, then chief ministers, governors, and the deputy chief ministers, and so many bureaucrats, police officials. So many people came. They come, they appreciate. They said, "Oh, it's a very good idea." But when the question of implementing that comes, nobody is ready to give a serious thought to it. For them, it's just a status quoist approach. Just this function is over. That's all. But for me, it's a passion. It's a life mission for me. So once I realized that the governments were not taking that much seriously this issue, then I gave this concept to that South International firm. Now they are trying to convince the corporate world and to the different other sectors, and maybe that in the near future, a lot of people would be able to make use of this concept, and the behavior of a lot of people would be changing because of this thing.
Absolutely, sir. So our last question goes to the government. What are your suggestions for the government regarding your efforts or criminology?
Yeah, you see that firstly, a lot of our literature is available only in Sanskrit or Hindi. So that literature needs to be translated into English language and various other languages, Indian languages and foreign languages, so that people come to know as to what is Indian philosophy and how they can make use of this philosophy. Secondly, this yoga and Sankhya philosophy must be introduced at the school level, at the college level, at the university level, and wherever the other professional institutions are there. Thirdly, the prison systems, the corporate sector, then even the wealth forces, they must make use of this thing. And the United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime, which is involved in this thing, it must take a proactive initiative in introducing and implementing this concept at the various nations, various nations all across the globe. Only then, if all the communities, all the nations all across the globe take benefit of this thing, then there can be certain changes in the world scenario. There can be peace, there can be better lives for the people, and that is the ultimate life of every right thinking person. And this is what I'm trying to do.
Right, sir. I totally support, appreciate your initiative. I'm very thrilled that I got a chance to interview you. I hope. So I think I'll ask Mukul sir to take over.